Another week arrives, and the gaming industry has discovered a bold new innovation, charging ownership prices while providing rental rights. Sony has now reported that 82% of full PlayStation game units sold during its first fiscal quarter were digital downloads. Publishers saw that number, smelled unattended wallets, and apparently concluded players had voted to abolish discs, lending resale competition and basic memory. Then, former Blizzard president Mike Ybarra stepped forward and suggested something dangerously radical: customers should trust that purchased games will remain usable. Tonight, we are examining the proposal being described as a trust agreement, whether corporations would ever accept it, and why the buy button needs legal subtitles. First, an important correction prevents this story from wandering into the usual internet swamp. Ybarra did not announce a formal trust agreement, negotiate binding rules, or descend from a mountain carrying consumer rights tablets. Instead, his July 31st reaction called for a digital promise based on trust, transparency, and clarity after Sony published its new figures. Earlier, during July, he had already outlined 5 practical ideas covering permanent access, controlled sharing, digital resale, visible collections, and clearer platform plans. Therefore, the August 4th article revives an existing ownership argument, rather than revealing a brand new industry policy. Mike also served as Blizzard's president, not its chief executive, after spending years inside Microsoft and Xbox. Naturally, he controls no platform today, which gives his proposal considerable moral weight, and approximately the enforcement power of a pub coaster. Still, an escaped executive, asking what customers actually receive, is more interesting than another earnings call, celebrating engagement, while avoiding the word ownership. Applying the rounded ratio to 66.1 million full game units, produces roughly 54 million digital copies. Crucially, that statistic covers full PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games, not downloadable content, virtual currency, subscriptions, battle passes, or every dollar entering Sony's vault. Convenience won many customers, because downloads are fast, immediate, and require no journey through a shop, containing 12 phone cases and 1 exhausted employee. Yet, popularity never turns a restricted license into genuine customer ownership on its own. Before we continue, like the video, subscribe, and support the channel, because YouTube's algorithm treats independent commentary like a suspicious rash, briefly examined, quietly suppressed, and never discussed near advertisers. Consider that your contribution toward keeping the lights on, the glass occupied, and corporate language under medical observation. Back inside the digital clinic, the first symptom appears directly beneath a bright button marked buy. PlayStation's European terms say, customers purchase a personal license for private use and do not own the digital product itself. Microsoft states the same principle, with less decorative fog. Its digital goods are licensed, not sold. Practically, both sentences reveal that payment does not grant the transfer rights ordinary people associate with buying an object. Imagine purchasing a toaster that requires the manufacturer's server, forbids resale, and stops working after your account gets suspended. Central to his proposal is a permanent digital locker built around lasting access. Under that model, purchased games should remain available instead of becoming attractive cover art attached to an error message. Downloads must remain obtainable, installers must function, authentication must survive, and suitable games need a usable offline route. Otherwise, the locker becomes a digital mausoleum containing products you can view, remember, and not launch. Importantly, Ybarra separates single-player games from multiplayer releases, dependent on servers, live economies, matchmaking, moderation, and expensive machinery. Companies should publish shutdown plans before taking money, not improvise an obituary after the accountants finish digging. Ubisoft's original The Crew shows why these fears are real, while also demanding careful distinctions. The game became inaccessible after its servers closed in March 2024, even for owners, because its design required those servers. Since The Crew depended on online infrastructure, it is not a perfect example of an offline campaign being taken from a hard drive. Nevertheless, customers watched a purchased game become unusable without a continuity solution, making cheerful buy buttons look rather ambitious. Sharing forms Ybarra's second proposal, where digital technology suddenly develops the intellectual capacity of wet cardboard. Physical owners can lend discs to friends, siblings, children, neighbors, or cousins who return everything 6 months late. Download buyers navigate primary consoles, household restrictions, account rules, and license systems designed by committees terrified of generosity. Somehow, companies simulate galaxies, facial muscles, weather, and horse anatomy, yet lending one game remains forbidden science. Controlled family groups could prevent unlimited copying, block simultaneous use, and recreate the freedom of handing someone a disc. Such a system would not destroy gaming, it might merely reduce households forced to buy identical licenses. Resale creates corporate panic because it challenges digital distribution's favorite feature: every legal transaction belongs to the platform forever. With physical media, one copy can be purchased, completed, traded, gifted, borrowed, lost, found, and sold, beside broken controllers. Storefronts remove manufacturing, shipping, warehouses, shelves, and second-hand competition, which is convenient for everyone except the customer. For resale, Ybarra suggested a marketplace where players sell digital games for cash or credit while the platform takes a fee. Meanwhile, publishers might earn from resale, customers recover value, and older games compete through price rather than nostalgia marketing. Predictably, executives may dislike this because repeatedly selling the same download without surrendering control is a magnificent business model. Critics will argue that digital resale encourages fraud, complicates license transfers, and redirects buyers from new copies. Translated, consumer freedom might interfere with perfect control, so naturally, the spreadsheet begins to tremble. Collections provide another smaller, but revealing point, because Ybarra wants digital libraries to feel like things people genuinely possess. Meaningful rights remain hidden in terms written with the warmth of a submarine insurance contract. Displaying a collection is pleasant, but visible shelves mean little when every item remains tied to one account and one company's future decisions. Transparency, therefore, matters more than cosmetic presentation, because players need clear answers before checkout, rather than sympathy after closure. Platforms should explain whether a game works offline, requires outside accounts, depends on servers, supports family sharing, permits transfer, and has a shutdown plan. Currently, customers receive a giant buy button, followed by legal text, saying the transaction resembles buying, only in the payment section. Account bans, regional restrictions, third-party launches, and expired licenses can all weaken access, even when the game remains listed in somebody's library. Community skepticism is justified, because gamers have heard, "Trust us," approximately 17 minutes before every price increase, unpopular redesign, and server retirement. Voluntary promises can vanish after leadership changes, acquisitions, bankruptcies, licensing disputes, or one consultant discovering the phrase recurring revenue. Enforceable protections would need clear contractual duties, technical requirements, notice periods, refund rules, and consequences, painful enough to reach a balance sheet. Without those teeth, a digital promise becomes corporate fan fiction, written by the same company, holding the revoke button. Even Ybarra's plan leaves questions about who funds long-term storage, how licenses transfer, what happens after publishers collapse, and which games qualify for offline preservation. Those complications are real, but complexity is not an excuse for pretending customers deserve nothing beyond continued optimism. GOG already demonstrates one practical direction by offering DRM-free games and offline backup installers that customers can download and safeguard themselves. However, that model does not solve every multiplayer dependency, third-party account requirement, operating system problem, or expired external license. Nonetheless, an installer stored safely at home on your own drive provides far more durable access than a storefront icon asking permission from a distant server. Equally, physical media deserves an honesty check before collectors begin polishing cases like sacred tablets. Many discs require patches, contain incomplete builds, trigger online authentication, or merely unlock enormous downloads that were never inside the box. Several games depend on servers, regardless of format, meaning plastic cannot resurrect architecture that no longer exists. Consequently, the real conflict is not digital evil against physical purity. The conflict is customer control against platform control. Choice remains valuable because discs can support lending, resale, competition, collecting, and reduce dependence on a single account. Conversely, digital convenience remains valuable because downloads are immediate, storage is simple, and shelves no longer resemble a closing rental shop. Both formats can coexist unless a corporation decides coexistence is inefficient and starts calling removal a consumer trend. Numerically, the 82% ratio proves that digital full game purchases dominate one quarter, but it does not reveal why each customer chose them. Statistics record outcomes, not whether buyers preferred downloads, lacked attractive physical options, owned digital-only hardware, or simply followed discounts. Treating that ratio as a democratic mandate against discs is like seeing everyone use one bridge after closing the other bridge. To his credit, Ybarra recognizes that digital distribution can work without treating customers as temporary account holders. Unfortunately, his credibility cannot substitute for adoption by Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, publishers, regulators, or storefront operators. No binding standard currently guarantees permanent digital access, broad sharing rights, or a used game market across the major console platforms. Hence, the headline's trust agreement is useful shorthand, but dangerous when quotation marks imply a formal proposal that already exists. What actually exists is a public argument for a digital promise, accompanied by 5 ideas that deserve serious examination. Words matter, because audiences should not leave believing Ybarra negotiated an agreement that platform holders can now violate. Accuracy also strengthens the criticism, since the verified reality is already absurd enough, without attaching fictional paperwork. Ultimately, the industry wants sale-level prices, license-level control, rental-level flexibility, and subscription-level dependence, all wrapped inside ownership language. Players receive convenience, but publishers receive permanent authority over distribution, discounting, transfer, authentication, and the legal meaning of your library. This bargain may remain acceptable while servers work, accounts survive, licenses renew, and companies behave like responsible custodians. Trouble arrives when one link fails and the customer discovers that confidence was the only preservation feature included. A proper digital future would guarantee continued downloads, offline functionality where technically suitable, controlled sharing, resale options, transparent dependencies, and credible shutdown plans. Anything less asks customers to finance permanence for corporations while accepting impermanence for themselves. Maybe platform holders will embrace these rules because trust creates stronger ecosystems and customers spend more when purchases feel secure. More likely, they will unveil an initiative called Player Heritage, add 3 badges to the dashboard, and quietly change nothing. Digital games are not the enemy. Revocable games sold at ownership prices are the enemy. Overall, Ybarra diagnosed the disease correctly, but his cure remains a promise, waiting for legal teeth, technical standards, and companies willing to surrender control. Until that happens, the buy button is not lying exactly, it is merely performing a highly profitable impression of the truth. Finally, protect your library, distrust cheerful buy buttons, and go play something before the license expires.